Mike Bloomberg focusing on some of the Super Tuesday states. Today, he kicked off a two-day swing in the South. Meanwhile, his campaign is also doing damage control after some controversial remarks he made about minorities and crime resurfaced online. NBC's Josh Letterman is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bloomberg's first campaign stop.
Allison, Mike Bloomberg defending today his record on governing in New York City for African Americans and other minorities after this new recording emerged yesterday showing comments he'd made in 2015 about minorities and the stop and frisk policy.
95% of your murders and murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
He actually just addressed this at this podium right behind me here in Chattanooga after doing an event that was attended by more than 1,000 people here in Tennessee as early voting kicks off. Mike Bloomberg saying that those comments do not reflect the way he governed. They do not reflect the way that he actually feels. And he's hoping to move past that without people reading too much into comments that he points out are several years old. But we've already seen President Trump call him a racist on Twitter. We've also seen a lot of the other Democratic candidates piling on and adding to the criticism today. So this is something Mike Bloomberg is going to have to continue to contend with. And if he does make that debate stage next week, likely a question he's going to have to face then as well. Now, this all comes as Mike Bloomberg is campaigning here in Tennessee. He's going to be in North Carolina as well as Texas in the next couple of days. And his focus, Allison, is really trying to run up the score in those early states that are going to vote next month on Super Tuesday. Because while Mike Bloomberg is not campaigning in the early states, he wasn't in Iowa, he wasn't in New Hampshire, he won't be competing in South Carolina and Nevada, he does have offices around the country in those Super Tuesday states, and he's hoping he can make up for those delegates he's not getting in the early states by blanketing attention on the rest of the country. He's already spent more than $300 million of his own money on ads and organizing in a lot of those states. He has staff now, Allison, in 40 states around the country. That's more than any other candidate. He's got upwards of 2,100 people. That's like an army of Bloomberg campaign officials, more than any other candidate has been able to develop and to pay for. But the key question, Allison, is whether Democrats are going to be willing to consider a candidate who was not part of this discussion all along, who's someone who's coming into it a little bit later and is spending inordinate amounts of his own money to try to get elected during a campaign cycle in which Democrats are very focused on taking power back from billionaires, reducing the role of money in politics.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.